coding is great, but if it's the thing that's being pushed to people, you're not going to get as many people coming in technology because it can be intimidating. It can make people feel like I'm not technical enough.
Hmm.
And we need more than just developers. We need product managers, we need UX researchers, we need people in cybersecurity. Like, we need people.
Hey, welcome, y'all. It's Nannearl, as you know, and I am joined by another special guest. We have Niesha White in the building, in the house, and she's joining us all the way from Alabama. Is that right? Did I get that wrong?
Yes, I'm in Alabama.
Cool. Niesha is a product designer, and we're going to be talking to her a little bit more about UX and her switch from more of a development type role into UX. So that's what we're getting into today. So, Niesha, I am going to have you introduce yourself because I want the people to know who you are. So let us know. Let us know who are you?
All right. So first, thanks for having me. I'm super glad to get to talk to you about UX today. We've been talking about this for a minute, so it's exciting to get to have this conversation. My name is Niesha White, and I'm a product design lead. I just started my role September 1st, so it's still very new for me. But what I do most of the day is I design products for teachers or students related to learning and technology.
Cool. So, as far as your definition of UX, I always start with this. You're literally probably like the third interview I've done. So we've still kind of, I guess, sat in the realm of UX, if you will, for the people I've talked to so far, including you. So I want to make sure that we get a clear definition of what UX is from your perspective, because I find that we tend to have kind of slightly altering views of what UX can be, just depending on the person who you talk to or the resource that you consult. So, as far as like what your perspective is, what do you define or how do you define user experience?
All right, so this is a great question because you're right, UX is so broad. It's such a big term. And it's like there's UX in the digital world, but then there's also UX in just everyday life. So for me, I describe UX as kind of the steps a person takes to complete a certain process or action. So yeah, that's how I define UX.
Cool. That does it for me. Like, now that we have a good understanding of how you're, defining UX in your world, I would love for you to tell me more about your background. So I know you started more on the development side and now you're leading product design. How, like, what is your story here? Like, how did you kind of start out?
So, a little bit about my background. So, I was one of those people who could not figure out what I wanted to do in college or what I wanted to major in. So, when I stumbled onto computer science, I was like, I got to finish this degree at this point. I've been in school forever, and I was determined to get done. And I came to computer science from graphic design major. So the way I made the switch from graphic design to computer science was as I started taking classes and learning about Photoshop and actually designing the websites, I was like, this is really cool. And I was really fascinated about actually recreating them with code. And so that's where the switch to computer science came. And while I was a computer science student, I started first taking my classes online because, like I said, I've been in school a long time. So I had to work, and I started working at a bank as a teller. And while I went to work, I was taking computer science classes, and that's when I started looking for an internship. I definitely was leaning toward front end design just because I was coming from that graphic design background and I definitely wanted to lean more towards creativity. So uh, I started looking for internships that were local and that were paid, and so it was taking me forever to find the right position. I finally found one, and I didn't start as a front end developer. I was doing a whole other thing, but as long as I had my foot in the door, I was happy.
Hmm.
So I eventually did become a front end developer intern, and that's where things really clicked for me. And I started building web applications, and I really, really love just getting to create something from an idea and getting to sketch something and getting to code it. Um, Even back then when I was coding, my favorite part was always designing the website and just getting to see these requirements or these actions that a user had to take come to life and get to see them interact with it. So I began to get more into front end development. I fell in love with UX, and I started picking up some UX work on my own, really, and kind of carving that path for myself at work, and it paid off because now I'm where I'm at today.
Okay, cool. So like just kind of rewinding a little bit into your stint with front end development. Um, I know those similar things, I guess, to design and to UX, but also a lot of different things. So, as far as like what you did and how you were working with the different people who were on your team, like what did that look like as a
Mm.
developer, a front end developer?
Yeah, so being a front end developer who was having more of a UI focus, I got to work with our product manager more, and also my our technical lead on my team, and kind of got to get some insight into things like thinking about system architecture, and also getting to see our my product manager gather requirements and get some of that information, as well as of course working with my team of developers. um, my function on the team, I was definitely the what they call the UI person. Like I would mock up stuff, and then I would end up coding it as well. And my tech stack was Angular. I love Bootstrap. And yeah, that was my world as a developer. And it's funny because I mean it was just a few months ago, but everything's so different on the design side of things. And I I was not really expecting it to be that much of a difference because I'm like, I mean, I was doing UX stuff, but it's totally different when you're no longer a developer and just designing full time.
Yeah, that I'm interested to hear more about that. So like you talked about like why you made the switch, like getting more into UX. How is it like what's the difference? Like what's the biggest differences I guess that you've experienced and that you've noticed from like your time working as a developer to like now being in product design and more focused in UX?
Hmm. It's funny because like when I was a front end developer that was doing UX work, I feel like I did more like designing, and not necessarily as far as time, but now as like a product design lead, it's like there's design, but then there's also research, and then there's documentation, and then there's a lot of research. It's really the difference, I think. That's really the difference, and a lot of collaboration with a product manager. Like, I mean, we pretty much work hand by hand, and that's different too, as well.
So I guess when comparing the time you spent working with like, your product manager in development, like while being a developer and then also like being in product design, this is more, is it like different outside of just time, the time aspect?
Yeah, it's the time aspect, and then it's like also the things you talk about. Because I mean, me and my current product manager, since I have the developer background, we can talk about things like technicalities and stuff, but that's not really like why we're speaking. We're really speaking to get to we're usually speaking to try to think like a user, to empathize, to research, and it's like as a developer, it was more like I was getting instructions or Jira tasks from my product manager. But now, as a designer, it's more like we collaborate and really think through things and we don't really bounce off, we don't really collaborate on the actual design necessarily, but we're very heavily into like the process before that, like thinking of requirements and briefs and thinking through each feature and even the order it makes sense to do something. So and then we're I should also add this is our I said I'm new here, and this is also a new startup, and the product team is new. So that makes a difference as well because I'm coming from like a large corporation to a smaller, like startup style place. So that was something different. It's a lot more independence, and that's great, but it also means you have to really think through things and you can't lean on anyone else. And you got to really trust your gut and do good research to back up why you're doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah. So there's two things I want to touch on. I definitely want to hear more about like what the difference is, or like the adjustments that you've had to make going from like a larger corporation to a smaller startup. And also, it sounds like you're doing a lot more strategic work with your product manager, like as a product designer versus like as a developer, just more like kind of turning things out. Is that right? A good way to describe it?
Yes, that's a perfect way to describe it. It's a lot more strategy because, like, as a front end developer, I don't want to say you don't get input, but you don't really get input. It's like you're just kind of told what to do and you just kind of go along with it. But as a designer, to really get to be in those conversations and get to see not just the user side, but get to see the company perspective too and figure out what they want. That was something that was definitely different for me. And it's tough sometimes kind of balancing those needs and learning, but I'm always going to be pro user, of course. So that's my role.
Yeah, that is key, very key, like in UX. I'm sure as like listeners, watchers, whatever, as you will know, or as you do know, like designing and making sure that we're taking considerations from both users, but also like the business side is like that's what we have to focus on, and without doing that, we're kind of cutting ourselves. What's that saying? Cutting ourselves off. I don't know. Cutting off our nose to spite our face. I'm not really great with sayings. Something like that. We're doing ourselves a disservice if we don't do all of that. Yeah. That's what I mean to say.
Yep.
But okay, cool. So talk to me more about this change that you had to make, or I guess that you are realizing, or that you have realized when it comes to moving from a larger corporation to a smaller company.
Ooh. I'll say the biggest change is you have to have a lot of self discipline. Uh, yes, a lot of discipline because there's more independence there, and it also makes it scarier in a sense because it's like, dang, like I can't really put this decision on anyone else. Like this is my decision. It came from me. Oh, I'll say another thing that's different from a big corporation to a smaller startup is you have to wear a lot more hats, which is fun, but it also can be hard because sometimes it's like you got to play designer, but you also got to play brander. You also got to play graphic designer, and it's like, whoa. And it can honestly be intimidating sometimes because it's like, am I the best person that should be doing this? Like I think about that a lot, and it's not necessarily that I don't want to. It's just like, somebody could probably do this a lot better. But it's a great learning experience, and definitely has taught me a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think I have that same experience as far as going from a big corporation to a startup, but I moved from like government, which I guess technically is a big corporation. I don't know, to a startup, and yeah, that difference is there plus more because the government. But no, totally feel you on that. As far as like, am I the best person that should be doing this? I don't really know, but we're just gonna do it anyway, make it work. So you were talking about, working with others, and so we have an idea of how it was like working with your product manager and how that dynamic has changed from going from development to now getting more into product design. What about working with other developers? Like, how has that changed for you, if at all, as a product designer?
So it's funny because I actually haven't worked with a developer yet, and that's coming up at the beginning of next year. So I'm so interested to see how that goes because like I have a fear that I'll be that designer that's really annoying because I used to be a developer. And so oh God, I'm gonna try my best not to be that person, but I can also see myself being like, like, what are you doing there? Like I could see myself really wanting to speak a lot with the developer. So it's gonna be interesting. I'll try not to be annoying.
What is your like, I guess if you could think of an idea, I know it might be hard to think of how that might be right now, but like if we lived in an ideal world and you had this relationship pan out like ideally, like what would that look like for you?
I would say as long as a good relationship looks like a designer that pays attention to design details and actually utilizes a style guide and isn't straying from that. Someone who does that and is like respectful and easy to talk to, chill, I'll get along with. But the basics has to be a person who knows how to follow designs. And that sounds like obvious, but there are some people who cannot follow mock-ups. Like they see it and then they don't. I feel like they kind of use it as like a general idea. I feel like they use a mock-up as a general idea rather than something to follow strictly. So, and I'm not trying to be one of those designers like, oh, you got to follow this mock-up, but if you put a lot of research and time into it, you hope to have a developer that's able to translate that well into code.
Yeah. I could see how that would be good, like a good thing. Because yeah, nobody wants their work just trampled on or like thrown to the side. It's like, oh, like whatever. I'm gonna just do whatever. So yeah. You mentioned research a lot and how like you're doing that now, and then also how important it is as far as like, oh, we're putting this research in, so like when it gets to development, we're hoping that where they're still incorporating it, whatever it is that we found. What does research look like for you in terms of like how you're doing that and how you're dividing, I guess, your responsibilities as a product design lead?
Mm. So I'm not sure typically, I guess in other situations, how it will work with a product manager and a product design lead when it comes to splitting like research. But luckily, I have a PM that likes to do research. Whew, and it helps out a lot. Like helps out a ton. To have something to start off of so I don't have to just pull from scratch. Like she gives me like a foundation and then a foundation of her research for the product side, and it makes it so much easier to kind of even know where to look for with design research. For with me,
Mhm.
I spend a lot of my research time looking at competitor UX and actually utilizing their applications and seeing what feels good and what doesn't feel good. Um, Really, user research, I'll be honest, is one of those things that I definitely want to get stronger and better at. And so maybe we need to link up.
For sure, for sure. For people who might be, in similar shoes to you, who are developers and they're realizing that they want to actually switch to the design side of things, what advice, if any, would you give to them? Like how did you do it, and what advice would you give to other people, other developers to take to get more into product design and UX?
I will say get ready to do a lot of research and learning outside of your work hours. It's gonna take time, like it's gonna take a lot of time. Um, because UX is one of those things that I don't feel like you can just jump into because most times people are going to want to see your portfolio. So that's really, I would say, where you should start is to find you some courses
Mm-hmm.
that will help you create a product, like something that will take you through the process from sketching, ideating to full prototype. Take those courses, take at least three to get you some. Actually, I'll take that back. I'll say one. Just one full UX project is fine. Something where you're going through the full process though. And just having a place to showcase that online is essential. And if you do that, it'll help you a lot. Um, Getting it designed from a developer standpoint, I think is, I can't speak of how it is getting into that field from other places, but I feel like it's probably easier because when you say I'm a front end dev, people I feel like they assume that you're gonna know what you're doing because you literally build these websites before, so you know what technical capabilities go into it. You know how to think like a developer and a designer, and that's really beneficial. So I really think it's easier for front end devs to become designers. But advice though, definitely get one project that you complete on your own and show it online.
Mm, yeah, that portfolio is key. It's like it's life in UX world, apparently. Yeah, that's great advice. Do you feel now that you're on the product design side and you've been on the front end side when it comes to development, do you feel like you have more insight, I guess, in general, just when it comes to, I guess, creating projects or like knowing not projects, products, and knowing like what goes into that?
Oh yeah, it's being a developer, give me a whole lot of insight. First of all, I was already familiar with product lifecycle and I knew the steps that it would take to get a product out because I had been in that position as a developer. Also, I know how to think about technical feasibility as I'm designing, which is good and bad, I'll say, because sometimes I'll think too much like a developer when I'm designing, and I'm like, who wants to develop this? And I'll redesign it, and then I'm like, wait, hold on, don't do that. Like, don't try to like make it easy to code, and so I'll catch myself doing it a lot, like thinking for the developer, and that's been something I've been trying to stop doing. But it is helpful in some. It definitely is helpful in some ways though, because I think it makes me realistic when I design something. Because I know if we're trying to meet this deadline, I kind of like know how much to design. I'm like, ooh, they're not gonna be able to code this in time or something. I can think in that way, but I try not to think too much in my developer brain because it does get in the way sometimes.
What's the, I guess, con of thinking too much like a developer as a designer or like thinking for your developer?
Mm. I think thinking too much like a developer when you're designing can lead to not a UX that maybe isn't the best because you're more thinking of something that's quicker, cheaper, easier, and not necessarily what's best for the user. So, for instance, I'm just pulling this idea out. Let's say a great user experience would be to get all these, I don't know, push notifications or something, and then like you're thinking like my dev doesn't know how to do this, or my dev hasn't done it before. I mean, that can greatly change how someone utilizes something or interacts with something. So I think that can be a con, just limiting your scope because you're thinking about how hard something is going to be or how long it's going to take to do it.
I see. Okay. No, that makes sense. I do not, I don't have that problem, I guess, because I have no idea what goes into most of the stuff that our developers do. But yeah, it's definitely, I took a course as an online course for UXers to, at the very least, understand like terminology and just kind of the little things about what, goes into development and how we can communicate better, and just things like that. And also like how there is UX like within development, but like knowing how to talk about that. So that was super helpful. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that. But I can definitely see where you're coming from as far as like the whole thinking a little too much in that lane at the risk of um, lessening, I guess, the a good user experience. So makes sense. Now let's talk about Birmingham Black Techies. I've been really excited to just dive into this, but I wanted to make sure we got a full view of like you and like how you got to where you are. But tell us more
Yeah.
about this group and how and why it got started.
Yeah, so Birmingham Black Techies has, well, it's been established for like a year now. Started as a meetup group just because I could not find Black people in tech in my area, and I live in a really Black city. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, really Black place, and so it's just kind of crazy to me that I couldn't really find other Black people in tech to link up with. And so I went to Meetup, and there were a lot of tech groups, but not any that were dedicated to Black people. So at first, I really didn't want to start the group because that's just not my personality. Like, I never have seen myself as being a community organizer or someone who has to be in front of something. So I'm like, oh, I don't really want to do it. But I decided to do it just because, I mean, it's lonely when you don't have a community or don't know people in your area who are interested in the same things. So I really just did it out of necessity.
Yeah. I mean, that's real. That's real. So what is it?
Yeah, so it's funny that you asked that because I feel like since it's so new and also since it's mine, it just changes. It's changing. So initially, this started as a meetup. So that meant something totally different in January than today because of COVID. So March, when things shut down and we had to switch to virtual, it kind of like became more of an online community, and we still met up virtually every month, and it just became really a place for us to check in with each other and just see what's going on in our area with technology. Because one thing that a lot of people may not know about Birmingham, Alabama, is that it's definitely a budding tech space, and I'm just gonna put it out there. We're gonna be the next like little Atlanta. I really feel like it because there's so many Black people here, and there's so many startups coming here, and there's a big health scene here, and so there's a lot of like health tech focused startups that are popping up. Yes, because of COVID, it switched to mostly focus on virtual meetups every month, where we discuss things from like what's going on in the local tech space to Q&A with people who are doing different careers.
Hmm.
We've done like design, one where we kind of talked about questions. We usually try to pick just a technical topic and explore it. Then we also have fun things that we're doing, so like trivia nights or digital scavenger hunt, just ways to have fun with technology. And I'll give you the inside scoop of what I'm hoping to do next year.
Yeah.
So first thing is less of a meetup focus because first of all, it's just really weighing on my introverted self. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hello, I've done it as long as I can. I have to definitely reduce the amount of time that I'm like having to try to, I don't know, engage virtually because it's like, I don't know, freaks me out doing it too much. So, what I want to do instead of focusing as much on the virtual communication is to release some resources for people to learn about tech tools on their own. And so, things that I'm using at work and things that other people may be using, because I feel like that's the area that I feel like it's so hard to find training on real life useful tech tools that you are using not just for work, but maybe on your own, like Airtable. I just got into Airtable and it's been a game changer. And yeah, that's what I plan on doing next year is releasing content to help people learn about tech tools so they can be so they can embrace their inner techie and see that it's not so hard to use technology and have benefits from it.
Oh, that's great. That sounds like a really cool plan. I don't know. I've heard of Airtable like many times, but I have no idea like what it is. So no, that would be cool. I think that would help a lot of people, especially since, we're kind of having to do things on our own. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but I don't know. Being at home, it feels like, all right, so now I can't really depend on other people to do these like very specific things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking like if I talk from my perspective, like I would not be going to a studio right now. I'm like, obviously I'm at home. There might be a chance or a time when I would consider going to a studio to like record and make content, but Corona, like I would never go anywhere else. And so it's just like I got all this equipment and I gotta figure out how to set it up myself and just learn all this stuff. And so as far as people who like maybe want to start something like a group like Birmingham Black Techies or a company or whatever, and they got all of these tech tools that are out there and just waiting for somebody to use them, I feel like that'll be super helpful for people. You mentioned that you're an introvert. I too am an introvert, and starting things up and being at the center is not always the most comfortable feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to hear more about like what it was like setting up this group, and like what you learn from that whole experience.
It was terrifying. I was anxious. I was like, first, I was like, nobody's gonna join the group. And then after people started joining the group, I was like, okay, so now I actually got to meet up with them and talk to them. And these are strangers. And that's when I think that's when I was like, I was really freaked out by that idea. Like my first meetup, I was like, oh God, like I wanted people to come, but I also was like, what am I gonna say? But what I learned was that things are never as bad as they are in your mind. So just go for it. And then I also learned too to know your limits because, like, even though I am pushing myself to get out there and try to do something I usually wouldn't, I also see that me doing a meetup every month is not good for me because it stresses me out. Not even the planning, just literally the having to engage so much. It can be really draining. So because I know that, I'm going to change it next year so that once when I do things, I'm able to really get into it and it's not so much a sense of like dread. So I think one thing I learned is push myself, but don't over push myself. Like don't do something that's going to make me uncomfortable.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good lesson to learn. I feel like sometimes we get into this mindset where it's just like, oh, I'm just gonna keep going and like push past it, and then all of a sudden we burnt out and somewhere.
Hmm.
Yeah, so good to work hard and also good to know your limits. So that's a great lesson. And so as far as um, things now with Birmingham Black Techies, you mentioned, your vision for 2021, like for how the organization's gonna kind of shift and turn. But how's it going right now? What y'all got going on?
Yeah, so right now it's going really good. It really is. Like I couldn't be happier with how things have turned out just the first year. If you would have told me like a year and a half ago that we'd be where we are now, I'd be like, nah, nah, especially now with me leading it. Like, I would thought I probably would have like quit by now. Not because I don't enjoy it, just because it can be a lot of communication. I wasn't used to it because even prior to this, yeah, I remember I was a front end developer. We don't talk to people. Developers like I wasn't used to doing all this communicating. So some things that we have coming up for next year, we are currently planning our first digital conference, and it's gonna be February 3rd through the 5th. And the title of this conference is Black Tech Takeover. And the whole reason why we're doing this is really just to take this digital experience that we've been having for the past year and take it nationwide. And why not do it at a time when everybody's stuck home? I feel like there are never too many Black tech events because we're so underrepresented. So any chance that we have to get together as a Black tech community, I value it. So I really look forward to not just having a virtual Black tech homecoming, but presenting ideas beyond code, because that's something that I'm
Mm,
super passionate about. As a person who was coding, I just feel like coding is great, but if it's the thing that's being pushed to people, you're not going to get as many people coming in technology because it can be intimidating. It can make people feel like I'm not technical enough.
mhm.
And we need more than just developers. We need product managers. We need UX researchers. We need people in cybersecurity. Like, we need people outside of just coders. So I'm really looking forward to sharing those paths with people and letting them see that there's a spot for you, even if you just have an idea and wanna do a startup. It doesn't have to be like a Facebook thing, you know. If you want
Yeah.
to put your product out there, you can. And so those are things that we want to share with people. And that's something we're really excited about. Check out blacktakeover.com.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, how can people find out more about this event? It sounds cool.
Yeah, so to find out more, go to www.blacktechtakeover.com and you'll find our social medias. You'll be able to register and yeah, everything you need to know is there. And I also like to add that a really cool thing about this conference is being planned by myself and two other Black women. And I think that's amazing because a lot of times we are so overlooked in the tech industry. So I think for us to be planning our own thing is awesome to me, and that's something that I'm super excited about.
Yes, love that. Love that. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. So I will be sure to put the information for conference and just for the organization in general, along with your contact information, if you're good with that, in the description of this episode. So listeners, watchers, you can check it out and learn more about what's going on. And yeah, that is what we have for the interview portion. And now we're going to get into just like some random questions because I just literally want to know the answers. And so,
Okay,
first
let's see.
question is, what's my first question? Oh, yeah. First question is there a movie or book that has changed your life? And if so, what is it?
Mm. I'll say book that changed my life, The Alchemist, 100%, because just made me, first of all, it just made me feel good reading it. And it was such a simple story, but I felt like the meaning, it just spoke directly to me, the fact that everyone has a purpose. And
Mm,
I strongly believe that. And I love that the whole book was really just about going through all obstacles and not letting that stop you in following whatever is just like drawing you. And yeah, I just love everything about that book. I feel like there are so many quotables, and it's something that I wish I read when I was like 11 or 12, just to really open up my mind to dream. And it's an amazing book.
oh yeah, I love that book too. And I feel the same. I feel like I don't think I read that until I was in my 20s. And I remember exactly when I started reading it because I was like doing laundry at a laundromat and I had cracked open the book and was reading the book and almost finished it. I almost finished it in that like time I was doing laundry at the laundromat. So yes,
Mm.
I love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, question number two. If you had to choose between having carpet in your bathroom and having carpet in your kitchen, which one would you choose and why?
First of all, that's a really chaotic question, and I want to know what made you think about that. Like, whoa, like that's just like, ooh, both of them make my skin crawl, but I don't know what would be worse. I feel like carpet in the kitchen is probably the worst just because the chance that like old food particles could get in it and it's just like ugh. But the idea of either one grosses me out. But the kitchen is the worst.
So you'd rather have it in the bathroom?
Yes, I didn't want to say. I'm like, I couldn't verbally say it, but yes, if I had to choose, I would pick the bathroom.
Okay, okay. Just like
Yeah.
it's like a mental list I have in my head. Like everybody I ask this question to, it's just like, all right, one more tally for bathroom. Okay, got it. All right. Yeah, that question.
Mm.
There's no really right answer to that. Well, actually, there is in my opinion, but there's no good answer to it. So, well, we just leave.
What's your answer?
You know, I'm not gonna tell. Question number three: if you could be anywhere in the world right now, pretending COVID is not in existence at all, where would you be and why?
Hmm. That's so hard because it's like I have an answer, but then I'm also like so logical. So I'm like, well, the weather time would be like really sucky there, so that wouldn't really be my answer. So so I'm just gonna go with my first instinct and the first thing that came to my mind without like all of the stuff. I would want to be in a little tiny house in Sweden.
Oh,
And the reason why is because I was obsessed with her name is not Missy Maya, Shameless Maya. I was, I was obsessed with Shameless Maya home in Sweden. So that's like that was literally the first thing I visualized when you asked where I want to be. I would want to be at the a little place in Sweden somewhere like off in the woods in like a little house. Yeah, that's where I want to be.
like a little cabin?
Yeah, like a little tiny cabin, if that's even a thing.
Okay. Is the Shameless Maya, is that a TV show?
So she's a YouTube personality, and yeah, I was just she was in Sweden for I don't know how long, but her little house, the little cottage that she was in was so cute. And I was so jealous. And it like I never had a desire to go there before. Not even really visit, but and watch it's not even Sweden. Watch it somewhere else. Let me actually Google this. It was in Sweden. It was in Sweden and it's just so cute.
Yes.
Now I'm looking at the house again. Yep.
Okay, cool. Sweden. Like with the snow.
Hmm?
Is there snow there usually?
Yes.
That's what I picture in my head when I see Sweden. It's like snow.
So in my mind, in my I know in my mind I'm eliminating the snow because I don't like snow. That's why I said I had to take the weather away and the temperature away and just think of the place.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah, that's where I want to be right now though.
cool. That sounds peaceful, actually. Not no stress. So that sounds nice. But okay. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, thank you so much again, Niesha, for joining me and answering all my questions. Definitely appreciate it. Definitely was a pleasure having you here. If people want to get in contact with you, can they? If they have like questions about either
Yay.
Birmingham Black Techies or questions about switching from development to UX design, like anything like that, can they contact you? Contact you.
Yes. You can definitely contact me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Niesha White, Niesha White. You can also find me on Twitter. My handle is the Techie, NITHEETECHIE. You can also find me at www.birminghamblackteckies.com if you want to find out about some tech stuff and join the Black Tech community.
Cool, 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 cool. So yeah, reach out to Niesha if you have questions or if you want to check out Birmingham Black Techies. And I'll be sure to, like I said before, include that information in the episode description. But great. Thank you so much for tuning in, y'all. I hope this was informative. Hope you found it helpful. If you liked what you heard and you want to stick around for this ride, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well to be notified every time we post new content. I post a new episode every other Wednesday, and you can hit us up on the website and also sign up for the newsletter on the website too. That's at www.unpackedangles.com. And we're also on social media. So if you want to hit us up there, we're at Unpacked Angles. So yeah, that about wraps up everything. Thank you for joining me, Niesha.
Thank you for having me.
And thank y'all for listening. And as always, let me know what you're doing, what you're working on, what you got going on. And until next time, y'all, deuces. Thanks, Niesha.
Bye.
Bye.